It's election season now in the United States. Kamala Harris, the current vice president, is the Democratic nominee for president, and she's taking on a former president, Donald Trump, who is the Republican nominee. It's been a polarized election campaign, with former President Trump surviving 2 assassination attempts. The rhetoric has been acrimonious at times, to put it mildly, and while Harris leads the polls, it's difficult to predict who will win. This election campaign has also coincided with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the United States, his 8th since he became Prime Minister in 2014. And there was a different touch to this visit, with the current and outgoing President Joe Biden inviting him to his home state of Delaware. Prime Minister Modi landed in Philadelphia and made his way to Wilmington in Delaware, where he met Biden at his residence. The gesture on the part of Biden appeared to affirm the close relationship between India and the United States, and indeed the camaraderie between him and Prime Minister Modi. Much was discussed between the two, including an arrangement to set up a semiconductor fabrication plant at a time when there has been much global dependence on China and Taiwan in this regard. This was very much consistent with the objective of both countries to diversify their supply chains. The two countries also discussed their defense partnership, but a key takeaway was also working towards unlocking $1 billion in multilateral financing to support clean energy projects. All in all, the bilateral interaction represented a deepening and strengthening of existing ties that have grown considerably closer under Prime Minister Modi's tenure.
आज का भारत दुनिया में एक नए कैटलिस्ट एजेंट की तरह उभर रहा है और इसका प्रभाव हर सेक्टर में दिखेगा। ग्लोबल ग्रोथ के प्रोसेस को तेज करने के लिए भारत का रोल अहम होगा। ग्लोबल पीस के प्रोसेस को तेज करने के लिए भारत का रोल अहम होगा। ग्लोबल क्लाइमेट एक्शन को स्पीड अप करने में भारत का रोल अहम होगा। ग्लोबल स्किल गैप को दूर करने में भारत का रोल अहम होगा। ग्लोबल इनोवेशंस को नई दिशा देने में भारत का रोल अहम होगा। ग्लोबल सप्लाई चेन में स्टेबिलिटी के लिए भारत का भूमिका अहम होगा। साथियों, भारत के लिए शक्ति और सामर्थ्य का अर्थ है, भारत के लिए शक्ति और सामर्थ्य का अर्थ है ज्ञानाय, दानाय, च रक्षणाय। यानी नॉलेज इज फॉर शेयरिंग, वेल्थ इज फॉर कैरिंग, पावर इज फॉर प्रोटेक्टिंग। इसलिए भारत की प्राथमिकता दुनिया में अपना दबाव बढ़ाने की नहीं, अपना प्रभाव बढ़ाने की है। हम आग की तरह जलाने वाले नहीं, हम सूरज के किरण की तरह रोशनी देने वाले लोग हैं। हम विश्व पर अपना दबदबा नहीं चाहते, हम विश्व की समृद्धि में अपना सहयोग बढ़ाना चाहते हैं।
The Prime Minister's foreign policy outreach has been a proactive one, and this visit to the United States was preceded by visits to Poland as well as Ukraine, to Austria and to Singapore and Brunei. India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar had visited 10 countries in the build-up to this visit in a space of 3 months, and India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval had also met President Vladimir Putin of Russia. In the joint statement between India and the United States, the efforts on the part of India to achieve peace in the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine was also acknowledged.
So what are you thinking? Is it going to be a strategy based on Kamala Harris winning these elections, or is it going to be a strategy based on what Donald Trump will do if he wins these elections? And are these two different things, especially where India is concerned?
The consequences for U.S.-India relations, I think, are, as you know, the relationship is good, healthy, strategic, no matter who wins. There's bipartisan support in America for strong ties with India. But I think there is one candidate that's better for India-U.S. relations than the other.
And which one is that?
I believe it's Harris, and it's not a close call. I believe Kamala Harris is going to be a stable, consistent voice for U.S.-India relations, will continue the trade and deepening trade, will negotiate tough with India. India is a tough negotiator on trade and penetration of their market. I think she also will not penalize India for particular trade disagreements. Trump is talking about doubling the 10% tariff to 20%.
Despite the rough edges on some of her political views, especially on the abrogation of Article 370, on the issue of Kashmir, which she's been vocal about, and it's somewhat a non-negotiable as far as the Modi administration goes. Despite these rough edges, do you think it will be a smooth transition?
I do, and I do think that there are irritants. There are always irritants and disagreements between the U.S. and India. There were 25 years ago. There are today. And whether that is India disagrees with us on purchasing cheaper oil from Russia, or whether that is a different opinion that they have that we should have stayed in Afghanistan. Our people wanted to move out of Afghanistan after over 20 years. I know that we're trying to manage China's involvement in Afghanistan now. Both India and the United States are very concerned about China moving in there and displacing U.S. or Indian companies on mineral rights and other really important strategic issues. We're going to have our disagreements between the United States and India. India is in a different part of the world. They see the world differently, whether it's Iran, whether it's Pakistan, whether it's Bangladesh these days, where India has now had Sheikh Hasina come and live in India. We're going to manage these differences. We're going to talk through these differences. As two great democracies with a similar global view in so many areas, we can manage and talk about these irritants, but we have to talk about them before they become major problems. We have to manage those disagreements. And I think Mr. Modi, Mr. Jaishankar, Mr. Doval, our president, Jake Sullivan, our team, they've been able to do that and work through a lot of potential disagreements, but also deepen the strategic and geopolitical relationship significantly in the past 4 years.
Again in Wilmington, this time at Biden's high school, the leaders of the Quad, Prime Minister Modi, the US President Joe Biden, the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, and the outgoing Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida met. The Quad has evolved into a very important strategic relationship between the four countries who have a mutual interest, although they'll never state it explicitly, in containing and countering what many believe is an expansionist China. The emphasis on security in the Indo-Pacific, the situation in the East and South China Seas, and a rules-based order are all responses to what is widely considered as Chinese actions in the region. But does the Quad need to evolve further, develop more teeth, and what's the way forward?
Are we any closer to stymieing China with this formation? Or is it just, at the moment, P's and Q's being put in place and not too much action? How do you see this, Lisa Curtis?
Well, I think the Quad has really come into its own. Now, I do think this meeting will be one thing to watch for is whether they push forward with a maritime security initiative. I think this would be really important if we see something, the Coast Guard's cooperating or a joint patrol, a commitment to do joint patrols. This would be really significant because it would show that the Quad is producing tangible security measures that are helping to push back against Chinese maritime aggression. We've seen this in the South China Sea against the Philippines. We've seen it in the East China Sea. So this would be something to watch for, a maritime security initiative.
I think in addition to showing, though, where we can cooperate as a counter to China, although Quad is not a defense organization, you know, there's certain defense-adjacent activities, such as the one that Lisa was describing. I think the idea behind the Quad, as behind a lot of our cooperation with India and other partners, is to show an alternative to China and the Chinese model. And I think you see that in the cooperation, for example, that the Quad now has on maritime domain awareness with the Pacific Island countries. So we're helping a different region that, you know, China's made huge overtures from, and I think the Quad can be very useful as a structure for partnerships such as that.
Prime Minister Modi would also hold bilaterals with his Japanese and Australian counterparts. The Prime Minister is in the hometown of the American President. The Quad Summit has also concluded, and so have the Prime Minister's bilateral meetings with his Australian counterpart Anthony Albanese and the Japanese Prime Minister Mr. Fumio Kishida. Now, of course, the attention turns to the Prime Minister's engagements in New York. What's also very important to highlight is that we're in election season here in the United States of America. The Indian diaspora, the Indian community in the United States is almost 4.5 million strong. It's emerged as a very important, influential constituency and a vote bank that neither the Republicans nor the Democrats can ignore. With the diplomatic engagements with Biden and the other Quad leaders concluded, it was time to leave for New York. But before we bring you what transpired in New York, we at Times Now, covering the visit on the ground in the United States, also spoke to commentators, Democrats, Republicans about the upcoming presidential elections, the mood in the nation, the impact of the election on ties with India, and other pressing matters.
You know, born in New Delhi, you're a congressman. Indians are, you know, people of Indian origin in America are taking the Congress by storm. The politics in America by storm. How do you look at these elections where Kamala Harris is taking on former President Donald Trump, and she has some Indian connection as well? How are you looking at these elections?
Well, I'm excited. You know, we have Kamala Devi Harris, whose mother was born in India and who raised her. So I consider her a Desi. And then, of course, we have 5 Indian Americans in Congress. I affectionately call us the Samosa Caucus. Okay. And we need more samosas, and we need more of Congress to look like America. And as you know, Indian Americans are doing very well in the United States. And so it's only time that they get more involved in the civic life of this country.
How do you look at the campaign as it is running currently? We've just seen 2 attempts on former President Donald Trump's life, and then we've seen the debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, where polls suggest that she's picked up a lead of sorts. Where do you think this campaign and this election is going?
I think it's very close. I think that this is an election that will come down to the results of just a few states. Out of 50, there are about 7 that are in play, so to speak, that are very close, and that will help determine who the next president is. I myself am standing for election just like Kamala Harris, and so I'm also seeking a contract extension, so to speak, for my 5th term. And so it's a busy time.
Very big question that everybody is asking, that the American polls, extremely polarized rhetoric that we've seen, and 2 assassination attempts at former president and the candidate in this elections, former President Donald Trump. How do you see these developments, and how do you see the intelligence failure, would you call it, and what's the way forward?
Well, Navika, first of all, thank you for letting me appear on this show. And I'm a proud champion of the very strong friendship between India and the United States. I think, as I said, as somebody who's had the opportunity to visit India many times, India was always a nation that was about to arrive. That was what my friends in India would say. That was what Indian Americans would say. India's time has arrived on the world stage. And with that comes added responsibility, and something I hope we can talk about. In terms of political violence, it does worry me. It worries me. We see violence across Europe. We've seen some levels of violence even in Prime Minister Modi's recent elections. We've seen part of this due, I believe, to two things. One, the ability of the internet to exacerbate extreme voices on either end of the political spectrum. And candidly, when political candidates, and in the United States sometimes, when even Mr. Trump sometimes takes things he read off the internet that have no basis in truth and then expound those. I think as a national leader in any nation, you have to condemn political violence, but you also bear a responsibility of trying to speak things that are true. And unfortunately, and I think, I followed closely the Indian elections, I followed closely the European Union elections, the most recent British and French elections. We have foreign nation states who are using technology to try to spread division, often through the internet, often through some of the social media channels. And I'm not saying that is the causation of the polarization of the election in America. We have very stark choices, but there is something as chair of the Intelligence Committee that I think we have to watch very carefully in terms of foreign intervention.
The attention then turned to the mega event at Nassau County in Long Island in New York. Prime Minister Modi would interact with members of the Indian diaspora, now almost 4.5 million strong in the United States. Well, this is going to be a sight to behold. In a few hours from now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to be here. I'm standing right now at the Nassau Coliseum in Long Island in New York. And in some time from now, you can expect that this stadium, this arena, is going to be filled to capacity. It accommodates about 14,000 people, and what I've been told by the organizers is that as many as 40 to 45,000 people registered for this event, and only 14,000 at the end of the day can make it to the stadium. The anticipation is building up. It's going to be a big, big event, and there are more than 4.5 million Indian Americans who will be looking forward to this very important occasion, also happening in the build-up to the American elections, which take place in November. Indian Americans are, of course, a very important electoral constituency now. They exercise a fair amount of influence in American politics, and they'll be keenly watching the proceedings in the Nassau Coliseum when the Prime Minister speaks tomorrow. Before the Prime Minister arrived and addressed the 14,000-strong audience, we spoke to a number of Indian Americans who had gathered at the venue to hear the Prime Minister speak.
I always attend these events where Modi ji or any other Indian cultural events happen. I've been doing that for 8 years whenever possible.
आणि तुम्हाला इंडिया आवडतं की अमेरिका आवडतं?
मला दोन्ही आवडतं.
दोन्ही आवडतं तुम्हाला. Okay. Where are you from, sir?
Hi, my name is Prashant. I'm originally from Chennai. I'm from Boston here.
How long have you been living here?
I've been living here 21 years. It's really a proud moment and very happy to be here.
Ma'am, I heard you speak in Telugu a short while ago. Could you speak some words in Telugu to welcome the Indian Prime Minister here?
Sure. Modi garu, meeku chala abhivandanalu, suswagatam. We are very excited to see you today and we're really looking forward. Jai Shri Ram.
Sir, आप कहाँ से हैं?
और बड़ौदा, गुजरात.
और कितने सालों से यहाँ पे रह रहे हैं?
I'm about 25 years.
And Mr. Modi से कभी पहले मिले हैं आप या फिर देखा है उनको in person?
I saw him on Ahmedabad.
In Ahmedabad? कभी देखा था?
About 15 years before.
And कोई message Prime Minister Modi को, Indian American community को?
Whatever he is doing, continuing. Whatever he is doing great for the country.
Many prominent Indians who have achieved success in America were also present to meet Prime Minister Modi, and that included Vikas Khanna, the Michelin star chef. What do you make of this event? I mean, this is not the very first time that the Prime Minister will be addressing members of the Indian diaspora. He's done that in the Madison Square Garden back in 2014 as well, and this has become a part of a trend on his part to be addressing members of the Indian community in each and every country that he visits. What do you make of this specific event that's been organized today? What are you looking forward to?
I think this is structured more like a gravity, and which is necessary for people who are living in diaspora, because we're still looking at some connections back home. And I think PM being such a figure for all of us, who is like an elderly family member, I just feel that we all connect to that. We salute that and we bow to that, because that is such a big representation of who we are as Indians. And it's our unifying forces that how we're unified in this moment is going to define our structures and also our strength and our success.
And then it was time for the Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, to speak.
भारत माता की, भारत माता की, नमस्ते यूएस। अब अपना नमस्ते भी मल्टीनेशनल हो गया है। लोकल से ग्लोबल हो गया।
We also spoke to one of the organizers of the entire event, M.R. Rangaswamy. What are your key takeaways, sir, from how it's all panned out here?
It was a remarkable documentation of Prime Minister Modi's tenure as Prime Minister, right? He came to Madison Square Garden. We knew him then as a new Prime Minister. He got to know us. Then he kept consistently coming back. We hosted him in San Francisco Bay Area at the SAP Center, and then the Howdy Modi event, and now this event. So over that journey, 10 years, he's been able to document all the things his government has done. You know, building airports, building ports, building roads, improving the educational system, improving relationship with other global economies. And so it was beautifully laid out, but the best thing that got me excited was when he said, I salute the Indian diaspora. He really has that affinity and love for the diaspora, and the diaspora has a love for him as well.
That wasn't all. This was a power-packed visit on the part of the Indian Prime Minister. Next, at the United Nations headquarters in New York, the Prime Minister would address the UN Summit of the Future, and his focus on doing away with conflict and calling for the responsible use of digital technology and AI stood out.
Education, agriculture, and he's also thinking about the infrastructure of India, be it data centers, power, energy, and investing to make sure India can transition. And we are proud to be partnering with India. We are robustly investing in AI in India.
The Prime Minister has a vision that the 21st century is driven by technology.
A wonderful meeting with Prime Minister Modi to exchange ideas about the advancement of technology, the use of AI and biotechnology, and the growth of India as an emerging superpower economically. We have already a large research-based center in India. We plan to grow that.
Before the Prime Minister's visit concluded, he had a meeting, the third in recent months, with the Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky, who took note of India's call for the sovereignty and integrity of nations to be respected. At a time when there is war raging in West Asia as well as Ukraine, India, with its proactive diplomacy and multilateral participation, does stand in a position to influence an outcome. Time will tell on how these efforts shape coming events.